Any creative type will tell you that it's really hard to resist the temptation to add all sorts of fun little details into your work that most people probably won't even notice. And that is no less true for the countless creatives that have contributed to the works of the entertainment giant that is Disney Studios. With nearly 100 years of history behind it, their countless movies are nearly stuffed to the brim with all kinds of neat little details you'd have to pause the movie to spot and fully appreciate. So that's exactly what I did. Pixar movies are full of references that span across all of their movies, like the A113 code, the takeout boxes, and the ever-famous Pizza Planet truck. But one that tends to get overlooked is the production babies credit, where Pixar lists the children that were born to crew members during the production of the movie. Their credits are rephrased in Soul, however, listing these children as recent U seminar graduates, referencing the process newborn souls go through in the movie in order to develop their personalities. Let's hope nobody over at Pixar got this little rascal.
I'm a manipulative megalomaniac who's intensely opportunistic.
Oh, this one might be a handful.
At the beginning of the movie Zootopia, the sly fox Nick Wilde would like for you to think that he's the world's best, most suave con man alive. But if you pay attention, you'll notice he isn't quite as good at dodging the authorities as he claims. When Nick fills out his application to join the ZPD, he actually makes a little oopsie. Under the question of whether the applicant has ever been arrested, Nick apparently answered yes, only to cross it out and answer no instead. Given the worst we see him do is pulling a few ice cream scams, you gotta wonder what exactly he did to get booked. Since we're reading the fine print on legal documents anyways, let's turn our attention to the earlier film Lilo and Stitch. Early in the film, when Lilo's big sister and guardian Nani adopts the little alien troublemaker, we see her signing the adoption papers. I am not so sure that document holds up in court though. Closer inspection reveals that it's not actually an adoption form, but rather a thank you note from Chris Sanders, Dean Du Bois, and Clark Spencer, thanking the animators for their hard work and incredible talent. One of the best parts of Disney's Hercules is no doubt the rocking gospel-style soundtrack, more often than not sung by the Muses as they narrate certain parts of the story. During the song I Won't Say I'm in Love, where Megara tries to convince herself that she totally for real isn't in love with Hercules, the Muses appear as a row of busts to sing backup. This may look familiar to fans of the Disney theme park ride Haunted Mansion, as it directly references the statues that famously sing the spooky, grim, grinning ghost song, right down to one of them being decapitated. Not the spookiest song to add this reference to, but Hades shows up shortly after, so I guess it sort of counts? It's difficult to imagine now, with CGI animated films being the norm, but Toy Story was a big risk when it was made, as the first feature-length computer animated movie, which is probably why it got some pretty big stars in the voice cast, such as Tom Hanks and Tim Allen. And of course, Pixar animators just couldn't help but throw in some references to their lead actors' careers. When Woody is trapped in Sid's room, he gets stuck in a box weighted down by a toolbox labeled Binford, which is the name of the fictional tool brand used by Tim Allen's character in the famous family sitcom Home Improvement. Someone at Disney clearly loves dogs, if the sheer amount of movies about dogs, and to be fair, the occasional cat that hangs out with the dogs, are any indication. And they can't seem to let go of any of their canine friends either, as they keep getting cameos in each other's movies. In 101 Dalmatians, a sharp-eyed viewer can spot the Scottish Terrier Jock from Lady and the Tramp. Both he and Pongo also appear in the often overlooked Oliver & Company, joined by two other Lady and the Tramp dogs, Peg and Trusty. And finally, Jock makes a sneaky cameo in The Lion King of all places, being visible as a silhouette among the hyenas. How the heck a Scottish Terrier ended up in the African savannah is anyone's guess though. Time to rub elbows with the finest. After a bit of a lull in princess movies following the Disney Renaissance of the 90s, royalty made a big return in the company's films in the 2010s, starting with Princess and the Frog and quickly being followed by Tangled. Princesses were back in business, so of course it had to escalate all the way to a full-blown coronation. When Elsa is crowned Queen of Arendelle in the explosively popular Frozen, royal couples from near and far attend the ceremony, including none other than Rapunzel and Flynn from Tangled, and Tiana from Princess and the Frog. Disney movies don't just reference themselves all the time. they also reference contemporary culture and have pretty much always done so. One example of this would be the dopey vultures that Mowgli meets in the Jungle Book. If this friendly foursome looks familiar, it's only because they're supposed to. They, in particular their haircuts, are patterned directly after the Beatles, and the original plan was to have the band actually voice them. But unfortunately, John Lennon declined, which kinda ruined the idea. One wonders if, had they gotten the Beatles to voice these guys, their song would have been more contemporary instead of being a barbershop quartet. Cameos from other Disney characters are abundant in just about every Disney film, but The Little Mermaid truly went wild with it. Not only can you spot Donald, Goofy, and Mickey during a crowd shot early in the movie, but if you look a little further off to the side, you can also spot none other than Kermit the Frog, which, given Disney's later acquisition of the Muppets, is kind of hilariously prophetic, but it gets wilder. Among the many fish Ariel hangs out with, there's one that looks exactly like the titular Mr. Limpet from the 1964 film The Incredible Mr. Limpet, where Don Knotts plays a man who gets turned into a cartoon fish. Looking back on it nowadays, this might be one of the more obscure cameos in pretty much any Disney movie. Speaking of shapeshifting into funny forms, the demigod Maui from Disney's Moana may take a while to relearn how to properly shapeshift during the movie, but you gotta give him credit for being pretty damn thorough when he does transform. Since his animal forms usually lack the hands necessary to hold his iconic hook, it tends to simply integrate itself as part of his impressive tattoos instead, just to make sure you always remember that it's there. And even the mini Maui that appears in his tattoos transform with him, as you can spot him now being a little shark when Maui transforms himself into a bigger one. Gotta make sure those tats are consistent, am I right? Ralph Breaks the Internet may have its share of problems, but some of its jokes about the internet are actually pretty accurate, like the persistent pop-up ads that plague Ralph upon arrival. A particularly funny and kind of risque one states that Sassy Housewives are eager to meet him. If you pause, you can see that the sassy housewife pictured in the ad is none other than Aunt Cass from Big Hero 6, who, last I checked, is not a housewife as she was never actually married. And I think we all know what similar sounding word sassy is probably a stand-in for here. Man, the things you sign up for when you suddenly have to support 2 kids. Speaking of the San Francisco superhero team, one of the more unique and fun to watch characters is definitely Honey Lemon, who produces chemical orbs from her advanced purse that have all sorts of interesting effects when thrown. But a closer look reveals that these aren't just randomly placed buttons put there to make the purse look high-tech. The buttons actually form a periodic table, indicating that Honey is not just mass-producing certain weapons, but actually memorizing, inventing, and typing in advanced chemical formula on the spot, even in the middle of battle. Don't forget, they aren't just superheroes, they're super scientists. There's a heck of a brain knocking around in there. There's a particular type of Easter egg in Disney productions lovingly referred to as a hidden Mickey. What it basically means is that artists will try to include the iconic 3-circle silhouette of Disney's flagship character Mickey Mouse pretty much wherever they can. These often happen in subtle ways and usually just once, but the Emperor's New Groove decided to go ape with it. As Cusco is introduced as the spoiled brat that he is, we see an overhead shot of servants serving him food. And if you take a look at the plates, the vegetables are neatly arranged in 3 circle shapes. Is this the most hidden Mickeys ever seen in one single frame? Quite possibly. Oh, maybe not. The Peddler in Aladdin seems to just be a random narrator character who kind of just exists to get the story started. But fans have long speculated that there was more to him, namely that he is actually the genie himself in disguise, telling the story of how he was freed to a random passerby. It's been a prevalent theory ever since the movie came out, and there's plenty of evidence, like the similar goatee, sharing Robin Williams as a voice actor, and the fact that he's the only human character drawn with 4 fingers, just like Genie. Well, turns out fans were right, as Ron Clements and John Musker revealed in 2015 that the character was indeed supposed to be revealed as the genie in disguise at the end of the movie, though it was ultimately cut. But honestly, it kind of feels a little cooler and more mysterious without being completely spelled out for us. You know, it helps to know more than one language sometimes, especially when the writers hide sneaky little jokes in character names. When Mulan, dressing as a man to join the Chinese military, has to come up with a male name on the fly, she ends up settling for Fa Ping, which seems to weird General Shang out for a bit. It's not just because the name sounds silly to him though. Fa Ping is actually a Chinese term that translates to flower vase, a term that is more or less the Chinese equivalent of the English term eye candy. That is a delicate, fragile lady that does little more than sit around and look pretty. Not exactly the most masculine name that Mulan could have chosen for her disguise, but hey, Shang will make a man out of her yet. Truth be told, these are only a minuscule fraction of the many details, references, and little Easter eggs that can be found all over Disney's films. And the list will only ever grow longer as the entertainment giant brings us more and more animated adventures in the future. I personally can't wait to comb over them as well because you just know that we're gonna do that.